Good morning and welcome to our first May ISM Lunch and Learn session. Today we're going to be learning about the Sage budgeting and planning tool. Here to present for us today is Mr. Doug Leisure, a specialist in that area who works directly with Sage. I'm going to turn everything over to him in a moment, but just a bit of housekeeping. Lines will be muted during the presentation to prevent background noise, etc. We will open up for questions at the end. If you happen to come upon a question during the session, please feel free to use the chat window or the question pane and type that in, and we will address them at the end of the session. So with that, Doug, thank you and welcome.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to show the Sage budgeting and planning to your customers. So Sage has recently, I think it was April 12th, the official release of the budgeting and planning software to the 100 and 300C customers. So you get a free license of the Sage budgeting and planning, which is the tool that I have on the screen right now. I really look at this as the power user tool. This is the license that somebody from the finance team would use to design everything and manage the budget process. And then you also get 3 free WebView licenses. And I'll show you WebView in a little while, but the WebView is the tool. It's a web interface into these budget sheets that we created here in the budgeting and planning. But the web, it's a web interface, and this is typically the cost center managers, the department managers that would use WebView for accessing their specific budget sheets and entering their budget values. So one free license of budgeting and planning, and you can add additional licenses as needed. And then 3 free WebView licenses. Again, you can add additional licenses as needed. All right, so with the release of the budgeting and planning for 100 and 300C, a couple of things they did to the software to make it to help us get started using the product. The first one I'll go ahead and show you. I'm not going to actually show it in the software, but I'll show it to you in the online help documentation. But basically, after you install the product and you launch it for the first time, it pops up a little screen that I'm showing you right here, and it just gives you it's just a little wizard that walks through connecting to your general ledger. So there's a button here for Sage 100 Standard and Advanced, another one for Sage 100 Premium, and another one for Sage 300. So no matter which button you click on, you would click on the one that's appropriate to your version of Sage 100. The reason there's two different 100s buttons for 100 is the Premium uses Microsoft SQL Server as its database engine, whereas Standard and Advanced both use the ProvideX database engine. So it's different ways of getting to the data. So you just simply need to click on the correct button. The next thing it does is just give you a little screen that asks you to give it the name of your company database, a username, and a password that has permission to access that particular database. And then the wizard itself will examine your company database and will look at all the information inside of there that it needs in order to configure the software. So what does your chart of accounts look like? How many segments? How many characters in each segment? Your fiscal period setup, the budget codes that you've created, and it'll also import your chart of accounts and balances for you. So it'll do all that for you automatically. It's pretty simple and straightforward. So let me get out of that and move on and show you the product. So as I mentioned, it will configure the software for your general ledger company database, and it will actually import a copy of the chart of accounts and the historical balances. So let's one note of interest, especially to our Sage 100 customers. The budgeting and planning software does require Microsoft SQL Server as its database engine, because that's how it stores all of its data. SQL Server is a great tool and very efficient and can handle lots of data and do it very quickly and efficiently. So it stores all of its data in Microsoft SQL Server. And we can actually use also what's called SQL Express, which is a free version of Microsoft SQL Server. And in fact, that's actually the demo that I'm doing for you today is actually being done using SQL Express. But it does import a copy of the historical balances, the historical actuals, as well as the chart of accounts, and stores that all inside of its own internal tables for holding that data. So that as it's working with your general ledger data, it's using SQL to access that data, which just, again, makes it very fast and efficient. Okay, it also will import your fiscal period definitions as well as your chart of accounts. The next thing, then after it's configured itself, and that typically just takes a few minutes to do all of that work. Once it's configured itself for your general ledger data, the next thing you would want to do is to go ahead and build your first budget plan. Plan is what we call the collection of all of your plan sheets that you would be using for budgeting. And for most people, that's a tree-like structure that kind of represents your organizational chart in your company. So we call that a plan tree, actually, technically, because it is a tree-like structure. And typically, the lowest level is the thing we're assigning to our cost center managers or our department managers. And then we then also, the tree structure helps us with the summarization or the aggregation, the roll-up, some people call it. Now, this particular one we're looking at here, this example, the tree structure has our departments at the lowest level. And then has our locations, North America, South America, Europe, Asia. That's our lowest level, and that's what we're assigning to location managers, and they're doing their budgeting. And then all of the things within this branch are being aggregated or rolled up into a department summary. So the sales department, the facilities department, IT, sales departments. So the tree structure helps us with the organization of everything, but it also then helps with this roll-up and summarization, the aggregation of all of the data. So as I mentioned, the first thing you'd want to do then is go ahead and create your first plan. Now, what they've done for us is they've given us another wizard that walks us through the process of building a plan unique to your particular organization based on your chart of accounts structure. So just using the wizard, I'm going to walk through the steps of selecting the plan that I would want to use. Now, the first thing it presents us with is just simply a list of about 9 or 10 different budget templates that we can choose from. They'll be adding more of these in future releases, but this is what's built into it right now. And as I select any one of these items, on the right-hand side, it's giving us just a brief description of what this particular budget template or template set would create for us, a very brief description. The first three here are called zero-based budgeting, which just simply means we display historical information for your managers to use, but we don't populate any budget amounts. They must request a budget, and if they want a budget for that particular account number or item. So technically they get zero budget unless they ask for it. That's the name zero-based budgeting. The other ones down here then are baseline budgeting, which just simply means we will not only display the historical information, but we'll actually use the historical information and calculate some kind of a baseline budget for them that they then can adjust or modify. So those are basically the two different types of budgets that are included here. If I choose any one of the items, not only do I get a brief description over here, but I also, if I click on the button down here, I actually get a much more verbose description of what this budget template or template set would look like. So descriptions, screenshots with the data filled in. It gives you just a real good understanding of what this particular budget template set would look like if I choose to use that. All right, and then I'll go ahead and choose one of these. Actually, sorry, technically you want to get rid of these check marks in all but the one we want to choose. And then we go next. And the next part of it is just simply, it's going to examine your particular chart of accounts. Now, the demo company that I'm using has 4 segments. The main segment, or some people call that the natural, the location department, and a product category. Those are my 4 segments in my demo data. So it's trying to figure out what is the main or natural account. And actually, if you name it main or if you name it natural, then it can figure that out automatically. If you gave it some other different name for that segment, then you'd have to just simply put a check mark there to tell it which segment is your main or natural segment. Beyond that, then we're going to look at how we can start to build this tree-like structure based on your chart of accounts. So in my case, I might want to do, let's say, a location summary. And then for the second piece, this would be then detailing out each of the departments. So my sales department, IT facilities, admin departments, all those things are going to be broken down into the the details for each department within each location. And sure, in your environment, you might call them divisions and departments, or regions and cost centers, whatever your naming convention is. So this will allow us to then choose how we want to build things. The lowest level, again, is what we would be assigning to the individual manager, department manager, or cost center manager. The next level, which was our first item we selected here, that's our summary, our roll-up, our aggregation. So we want all of these departments aggregated into our 000 location plan sheet. Okay. The next part of it then is just simply filling in the name of what you want to call this particular plan, what year we're budgeting. Now, when I look at this, I always think of this particular date as the first day of my fiscal year for which I'm budgeting. So if I'm going to budget for 2019, then I would set the year to 2019 and the beginning date to January 1st of 2019, because that's the year I'm budgeting. The next part of it then is what budget code are we assigning to this particular budget plan. So in the, you guys aren't 300, but the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's a 300 thing. For Sage 100, you would have typically your original budget, your revised budget, but it's also possible for you to have created your own custom budget names. So again, all you're going to do here is just simply select the correct budget code that you're creating. So now we're just telling the software we're going to do our original budget for 2019. The next part of the wizard, and this is actually the last step here, is just walking through and telling the software the ranges of accounts that we apply to our different sections. So the plan sheets that we're creating are designed or laid out in a P&L type of a statement. Now you can change that once everything has been created. Your first budget's been created. You can change what it's doing, but just to get it started, it's creating something that looks like a P&L statement. So we have our revenue, our cost of goods sold, calculating a net revenue. Then we have our salary and G&A type expenses, calculating a total expense, and then an overall profit or loss. That's kind of the layout or the format of these particular plan sheets. And so it's just asking the question, for our revenue section, what is the range of accounts? And it has some defaults built into here. And if I just double click on it, it'll actually do a little lookup and say, okay, I can see in this particular chart of accounts, starting with a 4,000, that's our product sales, down through 4110, that's our logo design. Now, we could tell the software to start at 4,000 and to end at 4110, but that would technically be correct, but it just would not be the right way to do it. Just because I end at 4110 today doesn't mean that's where I intend to end in the future. So the better answer is to make our ranges as broad, as verbose as possible. Even if I don't have a 4,000 or a 4,999, but I want to give opportunity for growth in the future, I would make this range as broad as possible. So 4,000 through 4,999 is very broad for the revenue section. But let's say we have a situation where we want to have a small range, skip over something, and then have pick up some other ranges within revenue, within the 4,000s. That is definitely possible. So let's say we really want to stop at our customization here. We're going to skip over freight and sales discounts and start up again with product design. So if we have that kind of a situation, I just want to show you the software allows for that to happen. So our first range goes from 4,000 to 4,010, and then we can add another range in here. And here we'll go ahead and pick up then with our, let's pick up with the product design 4100, and rather than ending at 41110, we'll go ahead and just end it at 4999. But I just wanted to show you we have that possibility of having multiple beginning and ending points within our range. So a range can be multiple ranges, even though we're considering this entire collection to be the revenue section. So I just wanted to show you that concept. And then you just simply walk through the wizard and do a similar ranging for the cost of goods sold, the G&A type expenses, and the salary, and just putting the appropriate ranges there. And then you click finish. I'm not going to do that because I already built the whole thing for you back here. I click finish and it'll just take a few minutes to go through, and it'll actually build everything we're seeing here, an entire tree structure. And it also builds then the templates that were used to actually create all of these plan sheets. So the idea of the template is just simply a plan sheet in its raw form, the essential information that is used then to build a detailed plan sheet for a particular department or cost center. So here's an example of one of those plan sheets. So the idea of this section is that this is our range of accounts. It looks at the chart of accounts and it builds the plan sheet specific to these account numbers for this particular department and location within our 4,000 ranges. Here's our cost of goods sold, our salaries. So one of the neat things about the way the software does what we call a section is the idea that to me the powerful thing about what they call a section, this range of accounts, is the idea that let's say during the initial setup and everything, our expense section only had these accounts within that range. Okay, but then our chart changes as we grow and add new account numbers. Our chart changes. So the section concept is extremely powerful in the sense that it can initially build a plan sheet with all of our accounts for this particular department and location. It can build all of the accounts automatically into the plan sheet. But also it has the capability then of coming back later and saying, you know what, I've added accounts in my expense section. Would you, the software, please do the work of looking to see if there's any missing accounts or missing rows? And if there are, please generate or create automatically those missing rows. So by looking at our new chart of accounts, it can actually itself fill in those missing account numbers. So to me, that's a very powerful thing about the way they design the software and this concept that they call the sections. Okay, so I mentioned the idea that a template is just simply the starting point or the raw definition of how this plan sheet should work. It's devoid at the moment of any account numbers because those are going to be filled in later on. but it's the essential makeup or layout of our plan sheet. Plan sheet is what we call our budget entry sheet. So what's kind of neat about the way they do that, I'll just unhide some of the complexity here. It's not too bad, but the concept is that we've described the section in terms of our main or natural account. But when I'm going to build this particular, use this template to build a plan sheet for Sam and Bill and Sally and all of my department managers, as I'm doing it, I will be telling it what to put or to replace these question marks in the second and third segments, what value to use for that. So if I want a plan sheet for location 100 and department 500, then my values are 100 in segment 2 and 500 in segment 3. So it's just the idea of telling it on the fly as we're building these plan sheets, what we want it to use to build a unique set of resulting account numbers. So let me just show that to you real quick here. The template itself has the definition of what we're going to do, but then we created just a very simple list of every plan sheet that we need to create. In this case, there's 35 different plan sheets, one for every location and department combination. And here we would assign those to the appropriate department manager who's responsible for budgeting this particular location and department. Now, this list that's on here right now was built from the chart of accounts. The Software Examiner chart of accounts had built this list for me. And this is where I would probably want to go back and change. I think the description here would be much cleaner if we change this to say sales department, location, North America. Just some kind of a description like that would make a whole lot more sense in my mind. So that's probably one of the things you would want to modify after using the wizard to build your first template set. The next part of it then is just simply the idea that says, when I'm building this particular sheet, let's take this one as an example. I'm building it for Sally, and I need the software to replace the location segment with a value of 100. Sorry, the location is 200, and the department segment is going to have a value of 100. So you can see right over here, we're just telling it what value to use to substitute those question marks. So it becomes a very simple list to build initially, and also very simple for you to extend. If you add departments later in life, you just simply add a couple rows here and fill in the correct name and description, assign it to the right person, and fill in the appropriate values for your new department sheet. So it's very simple to create 20, 30, 200, 500. Software doesn't care how many of these you build. It'll be very happy to go through and build as many of these plan sheets as you have departments. And they all have a similar look and feel because they're all built from the same template as their starting point. Okay. Now the particular template set I created also implements a plan sheet that we use just simply for housing some of our assumptions. Some people call them drivers, but the concept here is just simply a starting point for you to put some of your drivers and assumptions. So the entire collection of plan sheets are all using a similar look and feel, and they all have some values assigned by typically the finance team to say this is what the default revenue increase is going to be, 5%, or whatever value you put in here. Also, the increase for the cost of goods sold, and I say increase, this could actually be, of course, a negative number. If you wanted to do a decrease, that's not a problem. Salary increase and G&A increase. Some other assumptions here are related to how the annual numbers are spread across individual periods. So it gives us a global assumption sheet as a starting point as well. And again, I think of these templates as just that, a starting point for you, so that you can you can take these templates, and with just a little bit of training, you can actually start to modify and customize these templates. So if you don't like the way it's working, customize it. If you need, if you don't have a cost of goods sold section, remove it and change your mathematics in here. If you need additional sections, maybe you have a travel section that you need to implement in here, and break apart the G&A expenses and have a travel all by itself, or additional things, maybe a marketing expense. Not a problem. Just, again, with a little bit of training, you can come in here and just add your own sections, change the mathematics of how this is working. That's not a problem. And that's again what I consider these templates to be for you, is just a great starting point to get you up and running. But please don't think of this as the ending point. I think you would want to plan on customizing the template to make the budgeting methodology fit the way you do things. Okay, I chose one of the template definitions, and I just wanted to go through it a little bit just to give you kind of a little bit of an idea of how the software works. So it's probably good to have some of that understanding. So let me just choose one of our resulting budget sheets. And so again, the range of accounts then, as I built it for this particular location and department, resulted in this number of accounts within the revenue range of accounts, and this number of accounts for the cost of goods sold. So a couple things. The software does implement everything in a spreadsheet format, just because that's so familiar with most of our customers that we work with. A lot of them have already been doing their budgeting in Excel. So the total net revenue is just a sum of the column. Total cost of goods sold, again, a sum of the range within this column. Net revenue is, I'm sorry, I should explain, it's right up here in the cell formula here. So total revenue minus total cost of goods sold is the simple cell formula to calculate net revenue. This is all very standard and familiar. So anybody that's worked in Excel would understand this. It's nothing very technical or magical here. The other thing is you're probably, if I show you some cell formatting here, you'll see that this is also very familiar stuff. If you've worked in Excel, we have our number formatting and display as styles, number of decimal places, alignment, fonts, borders, background colors, and whether or not the cells are going to be protected or locked. So again, very, very familiar stuff if you worked with Excel. I think it's very Excel-like. Probably my only criticism of it compared to Excel would be just simply it's not as robust as I'm used to using when I work in Excel. All the same stuff that you're familiar with, but just not quite as robust as far as the options that are here, but very familiar. So now one of the things you'll notice is these cells here that I've selected. These ones are color-coded in blue. Is the blue color important? Not really. I don't care if you make it a green, a pink, a red, a yellow. It doesn't matter. The color is not important. What is important are two things. One would be these particular cells are unlocked, unprotected, because this is where I want my department manager to make changes to this plan sheet. And so we leave these cells unlocked, and then just to highlight for our department manager where he should be doing his data entry, we color code those using a background color. So basically the concept is our instructions actually end up being for our end users: open up the plan sheets that we've assigned to you and fill in the blue cells if you don't like the number that's already there. So we've calculated mathematically a baseline budget for fiscal year 2019 using the historical information. We've calculated for you a baseline budget. But if you don't like it, change the number. Not a big deal, right? So 101,684 is our baseline number here. I don't like it, so I'm going to add 5,000 to it by changing the cell format. Or in this case, we calculated we calculated $0 because we didn't have any actuals last year. So I can change the cell format, or I could even cell formula, or I could just simply put in my new number. What do I think product sales are going to be next year? Well, I think they're going to be 25,000. And then you'll notice over here, after I put in the annual budget, over here it's calculating an amount per period. Technically, what it's doing is it's using a mathematical equation to take this 25,000 and spread it into periods 1 through 12. And if you have 13 periods, that's not a problem either. The software is happy to handle that. But we're just using mathematical formulas to spread this annual amount into these period amounts, period budgets. And again, as I mentioned, your global assumption controls how we're spreading each of the different values. So you have control over that as well. So that's this particular template set that I created that's using this kind of a methodology. And again, just to kind of expose a little bit more about how the software works, I'm going to unhide my actuals, because technically what the software is doing is it's actually bringing in actuals, and I think the way this one is designed, it is actually going this particular set of demo data is using a standard year as its fiscal period definition, so January through December. But the way things are designed in the template is just simply presuming that we're sitting in the month of October. We have actuals, therefore we've closed September, and we now have actuals January through September. So mathematically, we're going to calculate our year-to-date actual as just simply the sum of January through September. And then we're going to take that number, we're going to annualize it, divided by 9, multiply by 12. We've increased it to an annual number mathematically. And those are the things that are being displayed for our end users, our department managers. From that annualized number, we increase that by 5%. That's the assumption coming from our finance team, and that's what mathematically calculates our baseline budget. Pretty simple and straightforward. Again, it's a template. You can change how this is working if you don't like this particular mathematics. If you're going to budget in November, then you would want to change your mathematics so that your year-to-date goes through October, and you're dividing by 10, multiplying by 12, that kind of a thing. Simple changes that you do to your template. But that's how this particular template works. Is it's calculating a baseline budget based on assumptions coming from our global assumption sheet. I mentioned the actuals here, and again, this is one of the things I love about the software. We brought into the software a copy of your historical balances so that the software itself can fill in the historical balances for us. You don't have to paste these in or type these in. The software actually fills these in for us. If you're thinking of it in another sense, we have account numbers down in the rows. Our columns are periods. We imported our balances, so it can actually fill in for us the net change amounts by account, by period for our historical data. And they call that the calculation engine. That's just what they call it. So it's filling in the net change balance from our general ledger source data. They call that the calculation engine. But again, what's nice about it is the software fills these numbers in for us, so you don't have to do that. It builds the rows, it builds the columns, it fills in the values. So it's doing a lot of the work that our customers who work in the Excel world have to do manually. Okay, so let me just show you real quick the web view tool. This is the budgeting and planning tool. And again, you get one free license for this tool. That's what finance typically uses to build everything initially, and then to manage the budget process. But let me show you the web view tool. So the web view, we use Microsoft Internet Explorer, and we connect to an intranet website within your environment. So let me just launch that. So the software is connecting to my intranet website where my WebView was installed. I'm going to log in as Sam. Sam is just simply one of my location managers. Yeah, it just doesn't matter what data we use. I'll just connect to it. So it's logging in, and as it's logging in, it says, "Oh, you're Sam. Sam, you're allowed to see these 4 plan sheets in this particular plan or set of data." And if I select a different one here, let's just choose. How about our 2019 budget? In that case, Sam was assigned just 1 plan sheet. There might be 20 plan sheets or 200 plan sheets there. Doesn't matter. This is the only thing Sam is allowed to work with. So his list is a simple short list of only those things that we in finance have assigned to him. Now, what's nice about it is when he opens up that particular, selects or to open up that particular plan sheet, would you like to check it out so I can actually do a read-write access to it? When it opens here in the WebView tool, what you'll notice is that this is exactly the same plan sheet that we created for him over in the other tool, this budgeting planning tool. So what's neat about this compared to like an Excel model is the plan sheet is stored in our SQL database. And we don't email a copy of it to Sam. Sam just simply logs into WebView and accesses his particular sheet. Yes, it's coming through a website, but it's downloading to Sam a copy of his plan sheet. And when he makes his changes and saves it, it saves it back into that one database. So we don't have this emailing stuff to the department manager. The department manager makes 3 copies of it, emails a copy back to us, and now we're having to manipulate and manage manually all these different copies of the plan sheets of the Excel files. We don't have that situation in this software, and that's one of the things I really like and appreciate about the software. But again, what you'll notice is what Sam is seeing is exactly the same thing we've created for him over using the other tool, the finance or the power user tool. So, and again, a lot of times the instructions for our end users is just that simple. I've assigned the correct sheets to you. Just open them up one at a time. Do your budgeting by making changes in the blue cells and save it when you're done. It could be just that simple. So it's also almost not very exciting, the WebView tool, by the time we get around to it, because we've done all the work in finance to create exactly what we need for them. We've created all of the cell formulas to do the spreading, to do the summarization, and all of those cells are protected so that Sam can't mess up our formulas. That's probably the most critical thing that I see from a design perspective. Make sure you give Sam the cells that we want him to modify, color code them somehow so they stand out, so Sam knows what he should be changing, and then protect all of these other custom formulas, because that's the part I don't want Sam to mess up. So like I said, that's probably the most critical design thing that I've seen over the years that I've been working with the software. So, all right, let me just step back here into the software again real quick. A couple more things, and then we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. But one of the big things in the software is we have the tree structure I mentioned, and the tree structure also then allows us to see a summarization, a roll-up, an aggregation of all of the plan sheets within those branches. And so here we can see our total revenue for that entire branch. We even see the natural or the main accounts within the revenue, so we can see that my 2019 budget for product sales is $1 million and $2 million. Our customization is $1 million, and the total is $103 million. We can see our total for our cost of goods sold, our salary expense, our G&A type expenses, and overall profit or loss. In total, but also then by period. And again, what we're seeing here is based on the tree structure. So all of these plan sheets roll or flow right into this this plan sheet because they're within this branch. It also means one of the things I like about this methodology is if this particular person no longer reports here, but they should be reporting somewhere else, you know what? I can just move them out of there to a different location. And now they will aggregate into this new roll-up sheet just because I've moved their location within the tree structure. So it's pretty simplistic to do that. Okay, then the other thing you'll notice is we have a summary at the top level. So a lot of times the tree structure ends up looking like our lowest level plan sheets that are aggregated into location, region, division, whatever you call it. And then if we aggregate or summarize these roll-up sheets, then we end up with a company-wide summary. And that's what we have here. So the software uses a simple technique to create the aggregation. We call that plan processing. Let me just show that to you. Well, actually, we'll do it on just a piece of the tree, just so you can see that it doesn't matter if I do the entire thing or just a piece of it. It's all the same concept. But where they call it plan processing, just simply the process you use to do this flow of data. They actually call that consolidation. So if we go and just run that, it's just going to do the movement of data from one plan sheet into its summary and aggregating all of the values automatically for us. So we don't have to build cell formulas to do that. It'll just do that step for us. And that's what they call consolidation. Whether you do it across a single branch or the entire tree structure, it's just as easy and simple no matter what you're doing. But that gives us, again, a summary or a roll-up at different levels, as well as an overall company-wide aggregation or summarization of everything. So now, at some point, whether you ask your department managers to go through WebView and do their own budgeting, or you sit down with them and you go through the process with them and help them define and enter their budgets, doesn't really matter. But at some point, we are going to have an approved budget. If you're done with all of your changes, you may go through the budget cycle 2 or 3 different times before you get to the point where you have a budget amount that you can live with, so that you ideally have an overall planned profit as opposed to a planned loss. But at some point, again, you're going to have an approved budget, and you're ready. Then the next step would be then to take the budget dollars out of this tool back to your general ledger. So again, this is one of the things where I think the software makes it pretty simple to do that. I have customers who do this in Excel, and they'll tell me that they literally spend days, sometimes weeks, doing this simple aggregation once they get the data back from their department managers, and once they have the approved budget, taking the data out of the individual Excel files so they can actually put it back into the general ledger for reporting. They'll spend days doing that as well. Whereas with this software, it's a very simple process we use. They call that the update balance. Kind of a funny name, but it's actually a pretty simplistic thing. We just pick one of the sheets and say, we want the software to go through. We want the software to go through, not us, the software to go through and gather up the budget balances. And we're going to assign this to the original budget in our general ledger. And we want to gather it up from the set of budget columns. Do you wish to update it? Yes, I do. Which sheets do you want it to gather it up front? Well, we could go one at a time, but better yet to just say, you know what, let's just select them all. Let it do the work of going through all of our sheets, whether there's 20 plan sheets or 200 or 500. It's all just the same step and just as easy. And we go and just ask it then to go through. So it's going to go through and gather up the budget dollars for us. So pretty simple and easy to do that. We'll give it a moment to finish here. Now, what it's doing is it's gathering up the budget amounts, period by period, account by account, and it's putting it into a little holding area that it calls the resulting balance. And I'll show you that in a second when it's done. So it's all of the right data, and it's good data. It's the right stuff, but it's not specific to 100 or 300 or 500 or any of the other general ledgers. So, and we do use the budgeting tool for all of those different Sage general ledgers. So it just gathers everything up into the resulting balance is what they call it. But the data or how it's stored here is just kind of a simplistic, ugly format. It's the right stuff, but it's not designed specifically to 100 or 300 or 500 or X3 or any of those things. So what we have is we have a simple Excel file that we've created that you connect to that resulting set of data. And basically, it's just a little trick we use in Excel where we can connect it to that resulting table and have it go through. And I just clicked on the refresh button, and just literally that fast, it only took a second or less. Literally that fast, it'll reach into that resulting set of data, pull the data out, and as it's pulling it out, it's putting it into this particular format. And I know, I'm sorry, this one wasn't the original, and it was in 2019. It's connected to the old data, but it does it just that fast. Puts it into this format because this is the format that Sage 100 General Ledger Exchange wants to see for its format, for its import. So we just simply open up this Excel file, refresh it, save it, and then go to Sage 100 to our General Ledger Exchange and just point it at this Excel file. Why Excel? Because it makes it easy for Excel to do the work of grabbing our data and reformatting it for us while it's grabbing the data. And Sage 100 General Ledger Exchange loves to work with Excel files. So both of those combine to say this is a very easy way to get that data from that resulting balances into a format that Sage 100 needs to use. It's also a great way for you because most customers know and love Excel. It's a great tool for you to use to examine your data before you import it into Sage 100. Importing into Sage 100 or whatever your general ledger is a design philosophy that they did in the software. So rather than making this tool yet another reporting tool, they said, well, that's crazy. We already have a place to store budgets in the general ledger. Let's just put the general ledger budget information back into the general ledger where your Sage Intelligence, BizNet, FRX, whatever you're using for your reporting, where it already knows where to find that budget data as well as your actuals. So that was by design to at the end of the budget cycle is to take your budget dollars back to the general ledger. Okay. So I wanted to go ahead and stop there. This is the information that Sage has provided to get you started with using the budgeting and planning tool. I've given the partner a lot of documentation related to what I just showed you today, both how-to documents and links to videos that cover what I talked about in a lot more detail. I gave her a copy of this Excel file that she can pass on to you, so that you have basically everything that you need to get started with using the budgeting software. Will you need some training if you want to modify these templates? Yes, I would expect you probably will need some training and some help to do that. Is this the only thing the software can do? Absolutely not. This is truly the tip of the iceberg. The software has been around for, I think, about 20 years now, and it does a lot more than what I've shown you. And if it's not that the license they're giving you is limited or restricted in any way, you get the full software and all of its capabilities. It's just that you would definitely probably need some training and or consulting assistance if you want to take advantage of any of the advanced features to truly customize this way beyond the getting started stuff that I showed you today. But I've given you, like I said, I've given you your partner information, how-to documents, links to videos to cover that talks about everything that I showed you today. So it ought to give you a great starting point. All right, and at that, why don't we go ahead and just pause and open it up to questions.
Perfect, thank you, Doug. I am opening the lines. We did have a question on, is this available for Sage 500?
Yes.
It is available for Sage 500, perfect. Perfect. Are there any other questions out there?
Actually, I'm sorry, let me be very specific. There is a separate version for Sage 500 that you would have to download. I don't know what Sage 500 is doing related to free licenses. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. So that is something you would have to do. Maybe check back with the 500 team to see if they're doing a similar thing on free licenses or not. I'm not sure. But the Sage 500 version was one of the first ones that they wrote for Sage products back in the early days. And it's a little bit of a different beast than this one. Functionally, it's the same thing. Functionally, it's the same. Everything I showed you was the same, except that it doesn't have the imports for the chart of accounts and balances and that kind of stuff. That's where it's just a little bit different. Yeah, but not a problem. As far as functionally, it's the same. It works the same, but you'd have to download a slightly different version. That's all.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any other questions out there? Not hearing any questions. As always, if something comes up or you think of a question, you can always reach us at AM for account manager, am@goism.com. And I can pass your questions along to Doug or put you in touch. As he said, I do have some product and information available. If you need it, please let me know. I will send that out to you. And Doug, I want to thank you for your time today. Very much, very informative, great product. So thank you, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Please keep an eye out on our events calendar for our upcoming webinars. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.